lovely Her Drive listeners, viewers. Welcome back to the show. We have taken a break and are now back and fresh for the autumn season. And to kickstart this new season, I want to introduce Shell Mendelson to you all. She is an ADHD career counselor, speaker, mentor, author, masterclass facilitator. So many wonderful things. I love a hyphenated person, multi-hyphenate person. So Shell, welcome to Her Drive. How are you doing?
Good. I'm great. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. Well, like always, let's dive right in. Let's hear a bit about you. What's your story and how did you get to where you are? And obviously, we'll dive into all the details.
Okay. Well, I'm older, so my story is always longer, but I always say I'll try and abbreviate it the best I can. So I'll start from when I first started doing this work, which was many, many years ago. I was trained by Richard Bowles after I had been working as a vocational rehabilitation counselor for 10 years and decided I didn't want to work in that system anymore and was kind of bored with the work I was doing, but I loved the field of career. So I trained with Richard Bowles. I had been using the process that I learned from him probably for 25 years or so, maybe more, and loved it. And then I took a break to start a company called Kids Art. And that was one of my brainstorms, which I don't know if you're aware of, or the creativity downloads that we sometimes get to and inspiration to start new things. But that's what happened to me. Kids Art what it was and still is a children's art franchise that became international. And it was a drawing program for children, an art program for children that was after school. And I put all of the pieces together. I woke up one morning with the name and everything. It took me several years of doing that, and it was very successful. We were located in 39 states and 16 countries when I left. And I left in 2009, which was quite a long time ago. And the reason I left was because I was miserable. Because I was now doing corporate work. I had become the thing that I didn't ever want to work in again, which was a corporate system. And I was not enjoying my day to day. Many of us with ADHD were the creators, were the movers, were the shakers, were the inventors of things. We love to put the pieces together. We love to brainstorm and strategize. And I love doing all that, except when it came to the day to day when things settled down. It became almost painful for me because I was no longer using the skills I enjoyed using. I wasn't loving the work, or I wasn't really enjoying the people I was working with. It became very difficult for them and for me. And so I did exit. It wasn't a fun exit. It wasn't a good exit. It was traumatizing, but I did exit. I knew I had to. And I also knew something was wrong that I needed to get fixed, or at least I needed to understand. And that was getting the diagnosis of ADHD. Sorry. Um, that that's when I realized it was time to make a shift. Oh my gosh, I may have to get a thing here. Shoot, did not prepare. Um, so anyway, I got that diagnosis, and once I got the diagnosis, everything fell into place. It made sense. I don't know. Do you have the diagnosis? You don't?
Now I'm
Okay.
wondering.
You're lucky. I know. Usually, when I do things with have these talks with neurotypical folks, they end up going, "Maybe I've got it. Maybe I should get." Yeah. Anyway, so once I got the diagnosis, I realized It was kind of a weight was lifted. So you go through all the stages of grief at some point. You may not go through them all together, but you still go through them. And I realized that I needed to get back doing to the work I love, which was the career coaching and counseling. I loved it. So I had my very first client. When I started working with him, it was like the sea had parted. It was beautiful. I felt myself again. I could see myself coming home. And I made the decision because he was very ADHD. I made the decision to just work exclusively with neurodivergent folks. And that was kind of what led me to developing all the processes that I use now with people with ADHD, which is inspired by Parachute, but I've added to it, I've made changes to it, and I wrote a book to help supplement all of the work I do. Um,
And when you say
and to allow,
inspired by parachute, what does that mean?
it's called What Color is Your Parachute? It's a book that's been actually, there's a yearly edition that comes out, and it's been coming out for the past 45, maybe 50 years now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And there used to be a little section for, where all the counselors who did the parachute process were located, but they took that out. So people used to find me that way. But when I got my diagnosis, I quickly understood that I needed to work exclusively with ADHD / neurodivergent adults. And that became a very clear from once I did that, everything has been just incredible since then. I've really enjoyed. I've never gotten bored. I always continue to shift and change and enjoy my work 100%. I work when I want. I do things my way, which is kind of how it's very defines the way people with ADHD are. We need to eventually do things our way, and we don't like being told what to do. A lot of us.
I think I need to be diagnosed.
I think every entrepreneur will say that at some point. You know, they'll
Yeah.
say, "Yeah." So no, I was in fact, very rebellious uh, toward, I should say, not against, but towards the people who like tried to micromanage me or tell me what to do when I already knew what to do, or do it a certain way when I knew that the way I did it worked.
Sure.
So those were things that just became intolerable for me. But I always knew that I wanted to do my own thing. And I had been doing that for many years. So, and never look back, never look back. I never want to work for anyone again. And this is not me saying don't work for somebody because I had to work for two different employers before I really could lay the groundwork to do what I'm doing. The foundation, I think it's really important to learn from somebody else, but I never felt like I was going to have to be there forever.
How magnificent. I just want to take a moment and one, congratulate you on discovering a bit more about yourself and then alchemizing that into becoming even more of yourself and setting up a system and a lifestyle that has allowed you to be in your joy. And not a lot of people, I think, are able to do all of that. I think a lot of us, it's even hard to even just look at ourselves for a sliver of something. So, what advice do you have for people who are just learning that they have ADHD or have been suffering, I'll say suffering with it because they haven't figured out a system to really set themselves up for success in their lives?
So I always say that, I am not an ADHD expert. I'm not even an ADHD coach. I am a career coach and counselor who works exclusively with people who are neurodivergent. So I don't profess to have all the answers for that. I can speak for myself. And because I've been around a lot longer than most of the people I work with, I feel like I'm somewhat knowledgeable, but I'm certainly not the authority on ADHD. But I feel like at some point you just get to the I just have to do what's right for me. I'm seeing an error come up here. Can you still hear me? I'm seeing an error come up. You've
Yeah,
run out of free disk space. I don't know what that means.
I think that's for your computer.
My computer?
Hmm.
Wow. Does that mean it's going to stop?
Um, I don't think so because we're as long as we stay live, because sometimes it'll save it to the computer in the event that the internet crashes. But I think we should be fine.
Okay. So I guess assume you're editing. Yeah. So basically, I think that the most important thing is to know what you want and to identify it, articulate it, and to what I do in my work is help people to define what it is that they actually want in the work that they do, right? And so you can't really set yourself up until you know what you want first, right? And having that knowledge makes it easier. Things kind of fall into place at that point. But if you're still questioning, what should I be doing? I don't have a clue about where to go and how to get there and how to figure things out. Then it becomes you become kind of susceptible to shiny objects, courses, classes, techniques, processes. You kind of will go with whatever kind of looks like the right path and you get excited about at that moment without clearly understanding who you are first and what your needs are and what you want. Okay. Not very many people can answer that question, by the way. But for people with ADHD, if you don't, it's a long path to, things not working out very well. Or maybe working out for a while and then running into a wall of some kind, having an experience where you just kind of bump up against yourself, really. And so that's what the process that I do with people is to kind of take them through all in with regard to the work that they want to do, take them through all the elements of what would make up the work that would fulfill them and sustain them. So as long as I stay on that topic, I'm good. If I try and go off into lifestyles and things like that, then that's probably where my expertise kind of ends, except for my lived experience. And my lived experience is that I know myself well enough to know when the red lines are there and I don't want to cross. Let's put it that way. And I can set up the structures that I need for myself. But I'm not perfect at it. I don't manage everything perfectly by any stretch. And I really am more of a person who's not much of a planner. I'm not a big planner, so I have to put everything in my calendar. It doesn't happen. That's kind of what happens. If I were just to say how I do my life, I do what I want, basically.
I see. Okay, fair enough. I love that. Well, in talking about like career decisions and helping people figure out who they are, um, what are there specific questions that you ask that are kind of leading for people to figure that out?
Absolutely.
Mm.
Lots.
Mm-hmm.
So I told you that I did write a course book that goes with the Your Next Career Move Masterclass. So I have a masterclass that I do with folks. But I wrote the course book so that people can actually get started on their own. But with some, you really need to have some accountability while you're doing it. So don't do it all by yourself. But the class is going to go deeper into all that and it covers all the different elements. So I'll just run through them fairly quickly. So we're going to be looking at what skills do you want to use? And these are all the things that are personal to you and must haves. Okay. So it becomes far more than just, oh, I like this and I like that. It becomes, what are your priorities?
Mm,
What are your must haves?
got it.
Okay. So what are the skills must you be using? What types of people, what are those characteristics of those people must you have around you to work with and work for? What kind of working conditions? And that's where we break it down a lot. Like I can see you sitting in your beautiful office in a really comfortable, it looks like a really comfortable looking couch,
Mhm.
and you have your colors. And those are the things that when you talk about your working conditions, you've created for yourself because they're important to you, are they not?
Oh, absolutely. I love that.
Yeah, so we're talking about what are the conditions that are absolutely essential for you to do be as productive as you can be and be as fulfilled as you can possibly be, and that gets broken down far more than you would think. It's really broken down into great detail
Mhm.
in terms of the physical environment and the not what I call the non physical, which is things like the culture of the culture of the company that you work for, uh, the routines that you do, the company policies, what your own red lines are, basically,
Mhm.
for what will work and what won't work for you. So we break that down, and then we look at the fields and the subjects and the special knowledges that are really important for you to consider over the long haul. For example, my foundation in what I do is education.
Mhm.
And from education comes coaching, right? Career coaching. So, and also from that comes things like interviewing on podcasts, reaching out to people that way, right? Spreading the word, doing my master class, writing the book, doing different things that please me that also are within the realm of the foundation of education.
Mhm.
So that's when I talk about special knowledges, it can go. Some people, their foundation is say food, and they love anything to do with food, and they can take food into how many different directions?
Mhm.
Thousands of directions, right?
Yeah.
So when you have that foundation, it makes it easy to go from there to sort of build from that point,
Mhm.
or easier, I should say. And then there's, what are the salaries and how much money do you want to make? What are the rewards and the benefits that are absolutely essential? And then the biggest piece when you fit it all together is what is your purpose? What is your life purpose?
Mm.
And that comes out of doing this work. It becomes very organic, very easy to put together because you see it all in front of you. You've written it all down. You've identified what your must haves are. And whatever your must haves are going to lead you to what your purpose is.
Mhm.
So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
That sounds like a very enlightening process that probably most of us, whether we're neurodivergent or not, could benefit from.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah, it is for everyone. I just happened to put it together because I worked with everybody for 20 years before
Yeah.
I got my diagnosis. And the reason, I chose my communities because I'm in their heads. I know exactly how we think. I know it made it easier for me to connect with the people I work with a lot more. So it became a refinement of my target audience.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, everybody can use this process. This is not anything that's just strictly for people with ADHD. But when things get put together in a way that makes it understandable for people with ADHD, it easily translate and makes it easier for the rest of the world to digest information as well. Because we're all on our phones and computers and we're all distracted, right? So this actually breaks things down, makes it more colorful, makes it easier to understand, more graphic,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And that's what we need. We need to have pictures associated with it and not just strictly words, right? So it really does sort of bring it all to life in a way that makes it easy for our brains as neurodivergent adults, but also for the rest of the world.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you breaking it down in such an articulate and eloquent way.
Oh,
And
thank you.
yeah, I'm curious for these folks. Okay, so you've done the process, you know where you need to be and what you want to be doing, but what are some challenges that can arise for a person who is has ADHD?
Well, are you talking about in life or are you talking
Um,
about on the job?
well, actually, I would like to talk about both. So why don't we start with whichever one feels like the best way to then flow into the other?
Well, I think for me, before I was diagnosed, I felt out of place. I felt like a square peg in a round hole. I felt like in the work I was doing, I always had to pretend to be like everyone else. They call it masking. That's the term they use now. Um, but I did it. You just get used to it. You think that people don't think like me, so I have to try and think like them. And I soon came to find out that that doesn't work. I can't do it. As much as I tried, I can't.
Mm-hmm.
So I might as well embrace who I am and do what I want because it's not going to work if I try and do it like everybody else. So in my life, I just have everything kind of the way I want it. And there are times when it's difficult because I am an introvert, right? But I love being on. I love doing my own thing, and I don't like being told what to do. So I like doing things like going to the movies on my own because I can pick my own time, see what I want to see. I'm just like that. Other people, I think, who are not introverts that like more are more social would have a harder time with that.
Mm-hmm.
During COVID, it was easy for me. My business actually grew during COVID because everybody was online and so was I, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it made it easier. As far as work is concerned, people really who don't understand this process of really identifying what you want, knowing what you want, being able to articulate it, will have a great deal of problems on the job. Maybe not immediately, but over time,
Mm-hmm.
especially if the job is not the right fit for them. So, for people that go into work that they're not attracted to, that doesn't fulfill them, doesn't have all the elements that are important to them with
Mm,
ADHD, it's eventually going to break down.
I see.
And that will result in things like people going into these PIP programs. Many people, do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-mm.
Those are the performance improvement programs.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, so those are very common now, and they're used quite a bit to help kind of exit people. But in the meantime, it creates the people who come to me. Many of them have been on those programs, and they were unnecessarily instigated or initiated when they probably should have just fired the person than have put them through that kind of soul crushing
Oh.
situation. And so I'm trying to reach out to employers now to just say, send them to, give them the book or send them to the class. I'm going to be training people. Get people to really know what they want. They will come back to you and they'll probably quit because they'll realize it's not the right job for them. But
Mm-hmm.
it won't leave them crushed.
Mm-hmm.
It won't leave them in a position of complete, emptiness and having to sort of pick up the pieces later on, which is what the people that I work with, I feel like half the time or a lot of the time, I might be picking up some of those pieces and
I see.
helping them to get past uh, this kind of traumatic event that they've gone through. That it doesn't, very often those programs they have them do things that have nothing to do with their job. So now all of a sudden they're like trying to sort of keep up the pace and they feel a lot of pressure. And then they start to feel like failures. They don't feel like what's wrong with me? That comes up again. Is there something wrong with me? Because I can't do this. This isn't, why can't I get through this? Well, avoid it altogether. It doesn't have to happen.
Sure.
And I have a theory that more people with ADHD are put into or neurodivergent people are put into those programs than the average. And the reason I say that is I only have 6 people in my class, and out of every class, at least 50% of them have been in those programs.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I want to eventually work with employers to help them to understand maybe a better way, an easier way, and to also obviously work with the people who've been impacted by them.
Oh, absolutely. It sounds like the a very fitting solution to challenges for many people. And you had mentioned that people think like, "What's wrong with me?" And you'd also mentioned that pe- there's different ways of thinking. So, can you identify specific patterns of thoughts or actions that might separate the for lack of better or for ease of conversation, the two columns of people with ADHD?
Yeah. So people with ADHD, right off the bat, I can say this. When you aren't doing something you enjoy and you're not doing work that you're attracted to in any way and you don't look forward to and you don't really see a future doing, and yet the money is good, the benefits are good. It's kind of the golden handcuffs. I just talked to somebody who
Yeah.
was in that position today,
Mm-hmm.
making great money, but knows that, the time is coming when things aren't going to work anymore. Um, that, yeah, the problem is that they just know that it's not going to work and they start making little mistakes. They start what I call leaking little mistakes and not even realizing they're doing it.
Wow.
Like, even a simple task can become like a big, huge problem, especially if it's one you don't want to do and you put another task that maybe you like doing better before that. You put more time and effort into it. But in the meantime, there are all these things kind of going on that you don't even realize are happening
Mm-hmm.
until you get called on the carpet for it.
Oh no. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that happened to me in my 20s. I went through all of that. I didn't realize, for example, I was working as a secretary for many years before I went back to and got my bachelor's and then my master's. But I would do something simple like making a copy of something, and I couldn't make the right amount of copies. I mean, it's not that I couldn't. It's like I thought I did, but I didn't. Right? I just so you make these mistakes and you don't even realize you're making them. So a lot of it is unconscious at first. You think you're doing okay, but you're really not because other people are noticing.
Sure. And do you think that's because you're just tuning out because you're not interested in being there?
I think you're unconsciously tuning out.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's not always something that you're very aware of. It just happens. You think you're doing okay, and then you go along. And so I always say if you're in the wrong fit with ADHD, there is a end point. There's a point when things aren't going to work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You can't hide it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, if someone has, say they are familiar with their, or they have their diagnosis and they're interviewing or potentially just being hired on, do you think that they should uh, share that with their employers or their managers?
If they have, can you repeat that one more time? If they have ADHD, you mean?
Yeah. Do you think that if they have ADHD, it should be brought to the attention of their managers or employers?
My immediate answer to that is no.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you need to share that information with employers. Once you know what you want, however, you know exactly how to manage that interview and how to do that job because you're picking the right position. And then you know what questions to ask the employers before you even agree to take the job.
Mm,
So
very
now
helpful.
you say, under these conditions, you will have, when I am able to, what is a project you want me to do? No problem. It will get done. Under these conditions, if I have this, this, and this, you're going to get the best project results you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be able to know what those things are and know what to say and not be afraid to say them.
Glorious.
Because if you don't say them and you, once again, put yourself in that position of winging it,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be the same cycle.
Yeah.
So it becomes, when you know what you want and you have that clarity, you can go into literally any interview and be what I call a job developer for yourself versus a job beggar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're not competing with everyone else. You're asking them to tell you why they're as good of a fit for you as you are for them.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant.
Yeah. That elevates your position. That shows you know what you want. That gives you more confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And you know they love the confidence.
Yeah.
They love people who can speak up, but if they don't love that, you're going to know that as well.
Yeah.
And you'll see the response and
Mm-hmm.
you'll be able to say, well, maybe this isn't the best fit for me.
Yeah. I think that
Yeah.
is just so true for life across the board. If you know yourself, you do know what you want, and you feel safe and secure in expressing that, knowing that you could be accepted or rejected or just not being a fit, that creates so many more avenues of just acceptance and connection with the actual perfect fit. And I love that the way that you put that is if you, for anyone really, to come
And
forward
yes, and I
and
think if you know, when the more you do that, the more opportunities come your way.
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The ones that you want, and then you can recognize them
Mm-hmm.
and you can kind of start to pick them out easier
Sure.
as
Sure.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
what do you have to lose if you just go into this, I'm going to get what I want or leave kind of
yeah,
attitude?
sure.
It puts you in a much better position. Right?
It's a very confident state to be in. And there seems to be a sense of like resiliency there and trust in one's ability to get what it is that they desire. I love it.
Yes. Yes.
So, for those who are listening to this episode and they might think, oh, maybe I do have ADHD, I'm having some challenges, where would you suggest that they explore the ways to determine if this is their challenge or not?
Well, there's so many books out on it that, um, there's so many experts who talk about it. I love the book Scattered Minds by just to see, read the first few chapters. And if you are saying to yourself, how does he know who I am? Then you know you could have ADHD. That's all I can say.
Got it.
So that would be Gabor Mate, who
Uh-huh.
wrote
Love
the book.
him. Yeah.
Yes, he wrote Scattered Minds. And he wrote it like in 1999, a long time ago, but it's like it was written yesterday.
Okay, so it's pretty
It's
timeless.
amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so when I read that, I said, how does he know me? This is just incredible. There are also a lot of checklists, out there. So if you just look for a checklist that says, do you da 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 da, and you check off, if you have like 70, 80%, you might have ADHD. Then it's time to actually get a diagnosis. And I always recommend getting a diagnosis
I see.
from a qualified individual.
Got it. Makes perfect
Yeah.
sense. I appreciate you sharing that with me. Well, we're gonna kind of wrap up our conversation, but I want to ask you my favorite question, and this is about you. And it is, if you could go back in time and give a younger you some words of advice, what would you say, and to what age would you say it?
I thought of I would never have dated that guy. No, just kidding.
I think we all have been there. Mom was right.
Don't date him. Yeah, don't marry him either. No,
Fair enough. Fair enough.
um, yeah, I would say know what you want. Ask yourself that. If I could ask myself that question, what do you really want? And can I just say one more little story related to that? So when I was in my 20s and I was in what I call the lost years, which were like age 26 to 29 when I went back into my master's in a master's program. I had a boyfriend who was very neurotypical. And I remember he applied to all the Ivy League colleges for law school. And he got into every single one of them. And he ended up going to Yale Law School. And I watched him go through this process, which took months. Just watched him, and I could not believe how effective, how organized he was and how meticulous he was. And I just was just in awe of him. He knew exactly what he wanted. Mm-hmm. And I remember, I was just this lost puppy. And I remember just sitting down with him one day, and he just looked at me and said, "What do you really want?" Just like that. Just those words. And something in me clicked at that point. I said, I want to help people in some way. I want to, like, things started flooding into my head. And that's when I got into my master's program. Mm-hmm. That was the best thing I ever did. It's not that everyone has to get a master's degree. I certainly don't, say that. Not everybody has to go back to school. There are plenty of ways to do what you want. And lots of people have enough to just transfer into other things. But for me, I needed to do that to do what I actually wanted to do, which was to be a counselor. Ended up with the focus in career. And that was really important to me, and I did it just like that. I got accepted. Everything happened very quickly after that. I don't think he has any idea because he went off to law school. We came back and talked about stuff, but we didn't really talk about that defining moment for me, because that was one of those moments to have somebody, because nobody had asked me that in my entire life.
Wow. Yeah.
Not my parents, not my friends, nobody.
Wow.
So in case you haven't been asked that question,
yeah,
it is an important question to answer for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's so beautifully said, and what an amazing impact that his one question had on your life. And I just want to say congratulations for answering it for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it takes, I think you need to sort of give yourself a hug, if I have to say, and ask yourself that from a very loving place, which is what he did. I mean, he looked at me and it was like nobody had ever done that. Just looked me right in the eyes and asked me that question. It was a very powerful moment for me. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for that story. Well, Shel, the floor is yours. If there's anything that you would like to say that we haven't touched on, please feel free.
Well, I would like to sort of, if I can, hawk my book.
Yeah, please, by all means.
So one of the things I did, like I said, I wrote the book, and it was I did it out of necessity because I was having such a hard time with the other workbook I was using that wasn't helping. I had to gerrymander a lot and explain a lot. So I said, I'm going to do something that's so easy to follow step by step and makes it workable for people with ADHD. So if this is visual, this is the book. It's called Unlock Your Career Path, a course for neurodivergent adults and teens. And I'll just open it up. So this gives you an idea of kind of the graphics.
Oh yes, I love you for that. I've done so many courses and trainings, and things are not well organized.
See,
It's beautiful.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it is very well. I have to say, I had a lot of people helping me with the editing, and um, I had help with the graphics. I had a beautiful graphic artist who did the Canva. Everything is in Canva.
Mm-hmm.
It's spiral bound, so it lays flat.
Love it.
And it's very ADHD friendly. So at the back, it's got the fold out of
Mm-hmm.
the planets. So this is the document that you put all your answers on.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you listening, it's a just a group of colorful planets that ask all the questions. So now you have a document with everything you need to sift and sort possibilities going forward. This
Mm-hmm.
one piece of paper that just has it all, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I wrote it in such a way that you could reflect and really go deeper and yet have fun.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it's not meant to be this stressful kind of situation. It does. If you're doing it on your own, you take it slow, but I think everyone should have a copy of this. Again, it's not just for people who are neurodivergent. Obviously, what's good for us is good for everybody because the way we see things are broken down. And you're saying how important it is for you to have that as well. But it's just interesting to me that a lot of people who are ADHD and who are authors write very unfriendly ADHD books. I mean, unfriendly to ADHD
Oh, how
people.
peculiar. Hmm. Well, now we have a solution.
They write great. The information's great, but they write it in such a way that, like, you have to think about the formatting. You have to think about the breaking things down a little bit more visually. There has to be a visual component to it, and if it's just a bunch of words together, for me, it takes me forever to get through books
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I mean, I read a lot of stuff online. I do a lot of reading, but I don't. It's really hard for me to sit down with a textbook.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the spiral bound is really helpful because you can just
Yeah.
go, have a cup of coffee, lay it flat, and do
Mm-hmm.
the work.
Absolutely.
So that's really, I wanted to help people go through this process that uh, I teach in my 8-week Your Next Career Move Masterclass, which is, goes much deeper and you get coaching and you get a cohort of people that you'll be working with some maybe for the rest of your life on this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
People become very close because they've gone through this very intimate program.
Mm-hmm.
They get to know each other. They've all experienced a lot of the same issues in their work lives. And it just becomes a very different style of teaching.
Hmm.
So I love it. I love doing it. I've been doing it for 4 years now, and I don't have any plans to stop. I want to train. I'm training other people now to bring it because
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be out there so that everybody can experience it on some level.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just starting to train people now, coaches.
Beautiful. Well, I think
Yeah,
that what you have created and continue to bring forth is very valuable. And I'm
thank
so
you.
honored that you took the time to share with the audience here. And it's been a joy learning from you.
It's been a joy speaking with you too, Cynthia. Thank you.